Okay, looks like we are streaming. How you doing, folks? Chuck Holton here, and I've been trying to see if I can get this thing working. We'll see if it's actually going to work or not today. Thanks for being here. I am going to wait for just a little bit. I'm going to talk about a couple of things that are happening in Gaza, and then I'm going to talk about we're going to talk about the overall weaponization of migration across the globe. Now, you know as well as I do that immigration is a top issue in this year's election. Coming up, it's going to be a huge issue on the debate trail between the candidates for president, and it already has been. So, I'm trying to see here if I can edit this. I'm trying to do two things at once, so you'll have to forgive me. Okay, so we are streaming, but nobody can see it yet, so I think it's stream settings. There we go. Let's see here. So I've got Todd Bensman that's coming on with us, and Todd will be, there we go. Okay. All right, we're on. So, hey, leave a comment in the chat box if you can see and hear me. Because I just want to make sure that I've got this available to people. It says we've got 40 concurrent viewers. So there we go. All right, so we're on, we're live, and thank you for helping me out there. So there's some interesting news that's come out that I just saw today, and it's talking about Gaza residents escaping from Gaza. Now, this is something that we've been kind of wondering about for some time, because there are, as they say, 2.5 million Gazans inside Gaza, and because of the war, they all feel trapped. Egypt has put up a really large
incoming call from
Egypt has put up a really large fence. Sorry, I'm getting phone calls here. They put up a really large fence, and because of that fence, it's virtually impossible for people to just cross across the border like they would in the United States. But according to this article I just posted over on my website, which is chuckholton.com, this is from CBC News, which is a Canadian broadcasting company, from an author, Yasmin Hassan and Rihanna Schmunk. And they posted this article about people paying between $4,000 and $10,000 per person to cross the border into Egypt. There are apparently travel like agencies that are advertising this service that they will get you out of Gaza for the right amount of money. And I guess that's understandable. It's not surprising that that would happen, because money talks pretty much anywhere in the world, around the globe. And Egypt is known to be a country where money talks very loudly. As a matter of fact, when I went to Egypt, I went to Egypt 2 years ago, and oh my goodness, it was insane. Everywhere we went, people just had their hands out. Every place we went, people wanted a tip. They would want a tip for walking by your car. If you pulled up to a stoplight, There's begging, and there's plenty of that in Egypt, but Egypt takes it to a whole new level. Egypt takes it to a level. Oh, here comes Todd Bensman. All right.
All right. I finally.
Hang on a second. I don't have your audio, Todd.
Oh.
Let's see here. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. No
All
problem.
right. Okay. Yeah, we got audio. Okay.
All right.
So I'm bringing Todd Bensman on with me to talk about this migration issue around the world. But Todd, what we're talking about right at this moment is how people are fleeing Gaza. They're immigrating to Egypt and beyond by just paying the right amount of money. And if they pay the right amount of money, they can get out just fine, apparently. So we thought that border was sealed from Gaza into Egypt, but this new article that just came out from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation details how some people are getting out of Gaza through the Rafah Gate. So the Rafah border crossing, which is supposed to be basically sealed for southbound traffic, only open for trucks coming in. And now we're learning that if people pay the right amount of money, they can get out. Now the question is, and maybe you can answer this question, where are they going? Now, first of all, let me introduce Todd to you. Todd Bensman is see if you can center up your camera just a little bit, Todd. You're just a little off center. Todd is a senior fellow for the Center for Immigration Studies. Immigration is his business. And that doesn't mean he's a coyote. That means he has made a life out of reporting on illegal immigration, especially into the United States, but even around the world. He and I have been on a couple of trips together that were very adventurous, mostly because he will not keep his mouth shut. He goes around and talks to everybody and has no problem asking questions that I'm pretty sure would get our arms ripped off. But that's what a good journalist does, and I've learned a lot from him. So thanks for being with us, Todd. I really appreciate it.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell me what you think when these people, if they are able to get out of Gaza, where is their final destination?
Well, it's the old saying, if you've got money, you can travel. If you've got money and you're from Gaza, you could probably go, if you have enough money to get out of the Rafah Gate, through the Rafah Gate, you could probably go anywhere, including the U.S. border. I have met Palestinians down there. I have seen them. Usually, and I just came back from Europe as well a couple months ago, all over the Balkans route, and I did meet several Gazans there. They had exited prior to the war, so they were already en route when the war happened. But obviously, those are the two destinations. You want to go to the United States, or you want to go to France or Germany. And
right.
If you've got the money, you can certainly do that. Plenty of people are coming from the neighborhood, from Lebanon, from Jordan, from Egypt. I've met lots of Egyptians. I think you have too, at the southern border. It's not a thing to get there, especially if you have money. It does take money. I mean, it might cost 20 or 30 grand to get from Gaza all the way to the southern border. Probably a good bit less if you're going through to Greece, through that route, through the Balkans route, but you certainly can get in.
Yeah, I went and visited a refugee camp in Greece, just north of Alexandropoli, a couple years ago. And I was by myself at the time, and so I went and showed up. They had some riots at this refugee camp. They had some riots there because the people were mad about the living conditions and that they weren't being allowed to continue to move to more lucrative countries further into Europe, like Germany and the UK and places like that. And I showed up and the gate was wide open. It was a Sunday. There were no guards. The gate was open. The camp was in a very rural area, so that it's not like they could leave the camp and easily walk to some place to go shopping or something like that. but people were coming and going. And so when I walked in, the first two people I met were a Kurd and a Palestinian who had just come from Gaza. And the Palestinian was a little more hard-edged than the Kurd, but he was nice enough to take me around, give me a tour of the camp, show me where he lived, introduce me to his family. He was working as a security guard at a nearby hotel, which is interesting. But even though he had a job, he had a free place to live, a lot of the resources that you would need to live, like water and sewage and cell phone I think cell phone service he had to pay for himself, but they had free Wi-Fi at the camp, and they were given food at the camp. They had a certain amount of food and everything. Free medical care, anything like that. So he had all of that, but he was very unhappy. This was not good enough,
well,
not up to his standards. And from what I've seen in Gaza, you would think he would be ecstatic with something like that. What did you find on your recent trip through Eastern Europe?
Well, you know, nobody aspires to the great Egyptian dream. If you manage to get yourself out of Gaza, and also nobody really aspires to staying in Gaza. It's politically correct if you're a Palestinian to want to stay there because it's you can participate in the becoming a great burr under the saddle of Israel, but nobody wants to live in Gaza either. They're
Not
there
right now, that's for sure.
Right, and even in the best of times, they don't want to stay in Gaza. So you know they're off to places where they can make money and send that money home and to live on it. And it's the same old story for Gazans as anybody else. But I will say this, that there's a problem with Gazans, and I don't mean to stereotype, you know, a whole population like this, but I'm going to stereotype Gazans because they are in an enclave that is like almost like a guarded camp where the ruling thugs have, and even before the Hamas ruled the Strip, inoculated, inculcated, propagandized from cradle to grave for decades, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, anti-Christian, anti-American, in the most intense, systematic way throughout every single institution of Gazan civic life, to just hate, to want to kill, to regard martyrdom and suicide operations as the highest possible honor, in a way that you can't find really anywhere else in the world.
That's right.
Very few places in the world. And so on you know, general mathematics, people who are coming into the United States or want to migrate to the United States or Europe from Gaza are going to get a boatload of trouble, in my opinion.
And they're very much more likely than people from other countries to want to come to America for the benefits it provides, but to also hate America at the same time. And although, you know, I have to say, you know, when you talk to people to people, it's usually just fine. You and I have both seen this. I've run into people from what we would call enemy countries, Iran and Syria and Russia. And I had somebody from Russia in my house yesterday. And, you know, person to person, you can make friends with anybody. But like you say, if you grew up in a barnyard, you're going to smell like the barnyard and you're not going to notice it so much.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, I've sat in many living room in the Middle East, you know, drinking their delicious Turkish coffee and eating their, you know, the lamb meat and all of that stuff. Everybody's perfectly happy while they're talking about murdering Jews casually over their drink. You don't have to pick apart. You don't have to dig very deeply to find that hatred there. I mean, they grew up with it at every level of civic life in every institution. Hopefully, some of them can escape it, and maybe they won't be so hateful in their adopted countries. But we've seen a lot of prosecutions here in the United States, here in Texas, of Hamas operatives. They bring it over, they purposefully go underground, and then they fundraise for Hamas and for the Muslim Brotherhood. All the while they're smiling at you.
Yeah.
And I've covered cases, written a lot of stories about Hamas in the United States. I know too much about that.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing. I mean, folks, Todd Bensman is as far as you will get from an extremist, some kind of right-wing whack job. Todd is a consummate professional, worked for the Texas Department of Public Safety as an intel analyst. Analyst, right?
Yeah, like manager of analyst. Yep.
And has been working now for what, a decade or more for the Center for Immigration Studies, focusing specifically on migration around the world. And there's very few people on planet Earth that know more about migration, international migration, than Todd Bensman. And so he's not making this up. And I've traveled with him. Like you say, Todd, there is a whole lot deeper level of malevolence when it comes to Hezbollah, Hamas, and their operations in the Western Hemisphere than most people realize. And so the title of this live that I gave it was the weaponization of migration. And so I wanted to talk some more about that. Let's talk about what weaponization of migration means and where we see it playing out around the world.
My definition of weaponization is when maybe a third country or more organize and facilitate a mass migration targeted at a recipient country in order to cause chaos and pain and collapse, even if they get lucky enough. Think Mario Boatlift, Fidel Castro in 1980. Think Belarus against Poland just a few years ago. Think
2021.
Russia.
Yeah, I was there.
Think Russia again. Yeah, of course you were. Think Russia against I think it's Finland or Sweden, right? Finland.
Finland. Yeah.
That is weaponized mass migration. What's happening at the U.S. border? I know there's a lot of debate about it, but I'm not 100% sure that is as explicitly weaponized as Lukashenko. What he did in there's too many countries involved. There's 150 different countries. People are coming to the U.S. border because we opened it. So if there's an enemy, it's within.
It's us. Yeah, we're not. They're not invaders. They're invitees.
They're invitees, right?
Right, and but that doesn't mean that other countries are not looking for ways to weaponize those flows of migration against the United States. For example, Nicaragua recently changed its visa requirements for people to be able to transit through their country more easily so that they can get to the United States quicker without having to go through the Darien Gap. That is a very serious... Right. Yeah, there you go.
For sure.
Obviously, China is weaponizing their own people against the United States by allowing tens of thousands of Chinese to come to the United States illegally now. We're not really sure what the end goal is, but we know it's not good. Why China's doing that? What do you know about that?
Well, we also know that it can't possibly be without the approval of the central government of China, because everybody know this has been so widely reported. There's no possible way that they're giving exit visas for tourism to Ecuador willingly without understanding that they're not going to the Galapagos Islands.
They're certainly headed to from Ecuador to Colombia, and then Colombia up through Central America to the United States.
Right.
So what are some other places where you've seen, I mean, you just late last year went on a multi-country tour of Eastern Europe and followed the immigration flows Tell me a little bit about that trip and what you found.
Yeah, there is a mass migration underway in Europe right now that is on a par with the 2014 to 2015 crisis in Europe in terms of just the sheer numbers. Only about the Europeans are only tagging about 400,000 in 2023. But the real number to watch there is that they had more than 1 million asylum claims that same year. So obviously 700,000 more crossed through and didn't get tagged going through. It's a huge number. I went from throughout the Balkan states. That's where the main one of the main highway.
One of the flows, yeah.
Right. There's the Mediterranean routes that are very busy right now, but the land route that is incredibly busy, it's reopened, is the Balkan route. That is going to be Middle Easterners. I met many Syrians, many Algerians, Moroccans, people from North Africa, people from Tunisia, and I mean, full burqas for the women.
Wow.
Like this is a very significant movement through the Balkan route, which had been closed. Most people think it was closed because when Hungary put up a pretty stout border fence that shut it all off, and it forced it to the western states through the Slovenia and Austria. Mm-hmm. Austria and Slovenia were forced to put up walls and fences to catch that diversion, and they did it pretty well, and they were doing pushbacks. Mm-hmm. But the government of Slovenia changed. It went liberal, and as soon as that happened, they suddenly became very humane. Whenever you hear the term a government official talking about we need to be more humane and orderly, that means what they really mean is we have to let everybody in and not.
Well, yeah, they're not. That what they mean is we're not being humane to our own taxpayers. We need to be humane to everybody else at the expense of our own taxpayers is what they're saying. Just real quick, folks, we got over 1,000 people watching and only 136 likes. So either you really don't like Todd Bensman very much, or you just haven't thought to go hit that like button. I pray that it's the latter. So please hit the like button. While we're at it, you can actually go follow Todd Bensman's brand new YouTube channel that he just started. You can be one of the first subscribers to his YouTube channel. I just put the link to it up in the chat box. And so I would highly recommend, because Todd is a first source journalist. Todd's not one of these journalists that goes out and does nothing but interview other journalists or take what he's getting from stuff that's coming out from other journalists. I do a whole lot more of that than Todd does. Yeah. Todd actually is the guy who goes out on the ground, goes into Juarez, Mexico, hangs out with the cartels. You just did that recently, and I'd like to have you talk about that in just a sec. But he goes and flies his drone over those guys, and he is the guy that other journalists go to when they want to know what's really happening. So you can get that information directly yourself by going to his YouTube channel right there. Lance Carlson says, I was the #2 subscriber. Congratulations, yeah. Lance. Let's go absolutely crush his page with new subs because he can't do live broadcasting until he gets over 1,000 people. And so if every one of you goes and likes, subscribes to his page right now, Todd will be able to start going live from the border on his upcoming trip down to, where are you going, Todd?
Oh, I'll be going to Eagle Pass Del Rio here in the next week. I just came back from Chihuahua State in Mexico all of last week. All of the videos that are up there right now, this brand new page, they only let me load 10 at a time, are from my Juarez trip and all my drone, a bunch of my drone footage. I'm trying to put the best of what I have up there on that page.
Good. Well, tell me about this trip to Chihuahua. Tell me more about what you found there and what kind of videos. Like, I'm looking at videos where runners are climbing the U.S. border wall near Juarez. You've got people breaching the Texas wire between Juarez and El Paso. Tell me about what you saw down there.
Okay, it's just a clown car show over there, man. It is probably, there's a lot going on. For one thing, you've got, among all the clowns, you've got the central Mexican government doing a huge medieval smackdown on illegal immigrants coming through Mexico as a favor, a political favor to the Biden administration, which doesn't want the optics of, you know, hundreds of thousands of immigrants crossing the border. That's happening in Juarez right now. It's ramping up. I was all over. I saw the troops, hundreds and hundreds of immigration agents coming in from all over the country, the Mexican country, because the Mexicans don't really want to see a Donald Trump elected. And if Donald Trump gets elected, it may very well be on the strength of the video of, you know, thousands and thousands of immigrants pouring over the southern border. Juarez, just a week or two ago, got kind of infamous again because of these bonsai charges of hundreds of migrants that just plowed through the Texas fortifications that Greg Abbott is trying to put up there. That's another factor, is that Texas is building, it's got to be tens of millions of dollars in anti-climb barriers and sea wire for miles and miles and miles. I think I may be the only one who actually droned all of this. You can just see thousands and thousands of yards and hundreds of National Guard troops putting this stuff up all along the Juarez, El Paso area. And it's got to be because of those bonsai charges. Now, the bonsai charges that you saw all over that went viral, that was like just one of them. There were a whole bunch more after that because it was successful. They plowed right over the Texans, and then the Border Patrol let them in pretty much. Some of them were arrested, but then the local liberal DA cut them all loose. So Texas started firing pepper at them. Nobody saw that part. They broke up 2 or 3 of those bonsai charges after the one that went viral. And the Texans were firing this kind of caustic, these pepper that's non-lethal stuff.
They're paintballs, like from a paintball gun, except instead of paint on the inside, it has pepper spray on the inside. And I think that you could sell tickets. I know a lot of guys in West Virginia that would pay good money to go down there if they could get a hunting permit to go down there with a pepper gun and secure the U.S. southern border. Maybe that's something that Trump could run on. But I mean, is this, to me, this sounds like an example of the weaponization of migration by Mexico to interfere with the upcoming elections in the United States. Mexico is trying to have an effect on the election by cracking down on the illegal migration on their side of the fence, turning that spigot down just a little bit so that it doesn't look quite so bad for the Biden administration right now while they're in election season. To me, that's meddling in a foreign election, and that is now, should they be stopping it altogether? Of course they should. They should. We should be putting enough pressure on them, like we were during the Trump administration, to turn off the spigot altogether. But they're only doing it now because the Biden administration asked them to. And to me, that sounds like another way of weaponizing the migration.
So you make a great point, Chuck. That actually is a great case of a weaponization in this context at the southern border, because just for a little bit of background, remember in October, November, December, we were seeing 14,000 immigrants a day crossing that border. All the drones were down there, 10,000, 11,000, 12,000 a day. It was international news for like 2 months straight. Right then is when Biden paid a state visit, an official state visit to Mexico City, and met with Lopez Obrador. That very day, Obrador deployed 32,500 Army troops all over the northern border that day. And throughout Mexico and began rounding up tens of thousands of of immigrants from northern Mexico, forcing them by baton onto buses and airplanes and shipping them 1,500 miles south to Tapachula and Tabasco State as well, and cleaned it up. And within a week, the numbers had gone from 14,000 to 4,000 a day.
Just like that.
Just like that. Now, here's the weaponization part. 60 Minutes just did a story on this 2 months after I reported it. I'll just say, I reported that big, that huge operation down there. I'm pretty sure I was the first and maybe the only one for 2 months to have reported on that. I did more stories after that. But they went on 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes went to Mexico and got Lopez Obrador on video saying, if you don't give me $20 billion, guess what? The migration is going to continue. I need $20 billion for root causes, to address root causes down here, which is just flat out extortion.
Yep.
And he made that is weaponization. He's saying, I'm going to make you lose the election to Donald Trump if you don't cough up the cash. And
well, I mean, if you run the numbers, $20 billion is about what, $400 from every single American man, woman, and child. So Manuel Lopez Obrador just came and said, you better give me $400 from every person in your country in order for me to do what we should be doing anyway, which is turning off the spigot down here. But he's only doing it for those two reasons: to get some benefit out of it for his country, and to try to affect the next election and make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get reelected. Folks, I want to go back real quick because we've got a whole new group of people watching, 1,400 people online, only 369 likes. So please go hit the like button, and right next to that is the subscribe button. And I want to talk about the story that started this whole thing off, which is that we're finding out now that there are quite a few Palestinians that are actually getting out of Gaza. These Palestinians, these Gaza residents, are able to pay Egyptian travel companies. They have actual travel companies. They pay what they call travel coordination fees to get them out of Gaza across the Rafah border into Egypt. Now, as Todd made the point, they're probably not going to stop in Egypt because nobody goes to Egypt for the Egyptian dream. They're going to go somewhere else. What kind of surprises me is that they're paying, it says $5,000 to $10,000 per person. We see people paying that to get to the United States from Guatemala. So it's not that much money. I mean, in the greater scheme of things, people from China coming to the United States are paying $30,000 or more to get there. This is, of course, just $5,000 to get right across the fence. But once they get across that fence, they're home free. They can go anywhere they want, right? If you look at a map, Todd, matter of fact, I may actually have a map here. I think I can replace, yeah. If we look at this map of Gaza, they can cross through the Rafah gate here and then go immediately from there to where? What's their routing going to be from there?
Well, I mean, first they'd be in the Sinai. They'd have to get to Cairo and disappear into Cairo. Probably
that wouldn't be hard.
No. And then, probably from there they could get themselves to the Gulf states, any of those Gulf states. Not that hard to make your way over there. And those are big, intercontinental airports. Don't ask too many questions. You can make your way to, I'm not sure what the visa situation is, but what do Gazans have? Would they have Jordanian passports or?
No. Well, I mean, there are a lot of Palestinians that have Jordanian passports, but they probably wouldn't have a passport unless they were some dual citizenship, like, dual American Palestinian citizenship or something like that. So most likely the people that would be able to leave Gaza that didn't have a third country passport would just be stateless persons.
Right. Not a problem though, because for the right
Right.
amount of money, you can buy a passport and get one made, fake one, or you can go to Europe. I mean, my guess is that a lot of these might opt for Europe, or make your way to a refugee camp somewhere. And the Americans are under this administration are probably likely to grant you refugee status at some point and bring you in. They're aching to do that. They're aching to be able to show we're bringing Gazans in.
Yes,
So
yes, that would be a big boon for Joe Biden's, base, at least for
yeah, the
many people in his
progressive
base.
liberal base.
Right. Now, you just did recently some very good reporting that I didn't see anywhere else about how the Biden administration has been secretly flying migrants directly into the United States from not from the border, but from within their own countries, from Cuba and Nicaragua and places like that. But there's not a lot of balance in where they're sending them, is there? Tell me about that.
Right. This is one of the lawful, safe, and orderly pathways that the administration has built outside of the authority of Congress to reduce the look of a big, busy southern border with all kinds of people crossing. Because if you can walk them over a port of entry or fly them into the United States, they're not down there in line with 10,000 people under the Del Rio Bridge or anything like that. That's a terrible optic. So they created these new pathways. They're handing crossing permits to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that would have crossed illegally at the southern border in order to get them not to do that. They're flying them in. At least 400,000 that we know of have been authorized to travel from a long list of other third countries directly into U.S. airports. Now, I have a FOIA out, and they turned me down, so we sued Center for Immigration Studies, and we've got this litigation going on for almost a year now to get the names of the airports, both coming and going. They will not give us that information. That is why this is a secret program. Even though they announced it publicly that they were going to be doing these flights, after that, they zipped their mouths and stuffed that program down in the basement and chained it down there and shut the door and locked it 6 times.
Yeah, but I mean, no other mainstream media really was concerned with it, and so you're right. And we said that. I remember talking to you when they first announced that program. I was like, they're going to be flying people directly from their home countries into the United States illegally, and then they're going to claim that the numbers at the southern border went down, and that's exactly what they did.
Exactly what happened. It's still happening, but it turns out that there was a way to kind of figure out the regions that they were flying into. And I last week, did the analysis of that and wrote it and put it out there. It's boomeranging all over the place out there. It turns out that Florida is the primary first landing spot for that flights program. 326,000 landed in a Florida airport, an international airport in Florida, probably Miami, Tampa, Fort Lauderdale. Some of those are really big ones. And then from there, we don't know what happened. We think that they you go through customs. That's where I got my numbers from. Customs, those guys that stamp your passport in. After that, they probably are transferring to domestic flights and then continuing on to other places. But New York was a big one. Texas was a big one. Landing zone. California, LA, San Francisco. And
the states have really no say in this, right? I mean,
that's why
Governor Abbott is not going to agree to have a bunch of people flown from Colombia into his state, right? So
that's the real reason why they won't give us the names of the airports, because it would give local politicians and elected leaders a voice, a stake in this thing to object. And they surely would object if they knew about it, because they are staggering under the fiscal burdens of so many immigrants showing up by bus or airplane or however they're getting in there with their hands out. They have nothing, and they're demanding everything. And so, of course, they would want to complain. Well, why are you at least turn that off? Don't let them fly in here. We're broke. Why are you doing this to us, my man?
Right.
That sort of thing.
Right. Well, and this is just another example of how migrants can be weaponized against people. In this case, it's our own government weaponizing the migrants against their opposition. Because if they're sending 10 times as many migrants to Florida as they're sending to New York in an election year, that can't be seen as anything but punitive on the governor of Florida. I mean, would you agree?
And Texas too. I mean,
Texas.
It is interesting. I mean, yes and no. It very well could be that. I am sure that there are advisors on the left and policymakers in the White House that are just going, yeah, rubbing their hands together, loving it. On the other hand, most of them are Haitians, Venezuelans, Cubans, and Nicaraguans who have there are large expatriate communities in Florida. So some of them are going to obviously stay there. And also geographically, look at Florida to Latin America. It's when you fly in from Panama, where do you fly into most often?
Washington, D.C.
Oh, all right. You're not a good example. But the point is that, from Haiti, we know for a fact that they were flying directly from Haiti because one of them just got accused of raping a 15-year-old developmentally disabled underage girl in Massachusetts in a migrant shelter there. And that guy flew in on this program right into JFK. So we know they were flying from, we got like 35,000 that have come in to JFK directly. Unknown how many others. And by the way, that brings up another issue, which is the vetting. When my stories first started coming out, and I was calling these secretive and secret, and people were like, this is all, and then they were like, it's not secret. They announced it. What are you talking about? It's not secret. In which case, well, great. Give me all the airports. And then we'll talk about whether it's secret. But they said the White House came out and their main message was, these are all like thoroughly vetted people that have been through the system. We've done all these database checks on everybody. This is a great crowd to be coming in. Don't worry about it. And here we have a guy that came in from Haiti and did a rape. And I don't think that that's going to be his first rape, because grown adults who suddenly decide to take on the hobby don't really exist.
That's right. Yeah, usually, I talked to a friend that was an undercover cop for 30 years, and he said that most of the people, once they get arrested, they usually have committed at least 30 separate crimes. Maybe not all the same type of crime, but at least 30 crimes up to the point where they finally get arrested and charged. Now, I want to just comment on a couple of things that are coming up in the comments feed. First of all, One Tired Mama, who lives in Portland, says PDX has a whole area with black screens where these people fly into, and then they're shuttled out before anyone knows they're there. Have you seen that in any airports you've gone to? That's the first I've heard of that.
First of all, what was that airport again?
Portland, PDX.
So there's two things going on that are easily conflated. One is that they're coming in off the border. We stamp them right in. Almost everybody gets stamped in these days into the country. And then they buy domestic tickets to go to where they want to go instead of taking a bus, right? So there's that domestic internal transportation thing that's happening. A lot of people see that. I've seen it. I was in Phoenix Sky Harbor not too long ago, and they were just everywhere. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds coming in from Mexico through the Arizona border. So it's hard to tell the different, like, what are their circumstances. These ones would be more viewable initially, or you could isolate them out if you saw them going through the international customs port inside airports from one of these foreign airports, a direct flight. I did look up Oregon and Washington. I studied those, and there were not a lot of direct flights showing up there because look how far they are from departure airports.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that they didn't land in Miami first and then catch a domestic over to Portland or somewhere else. So,
but it's pretty surprising that there would be. I'm not surprising. It's the first I've heard of it where they're putting up barriers. The only place I've ever seen barriers in an airport where they specifically don't want you to see behind the curtain is like when El Al doesn't want. Usually they'll rope off an area on a direct flight to Israel, and that's for security purposes, something different. So I'm not arguing with you at all, One Tired Mama. I'm just saying that's the first I've heard of that. So the other thing I wanted to just comment on, which is in the comments. This is a CBN live stream. We've got 1,800 people watching. Please hit the like button. It really helps get the word out so that more people can see this. I wanted to comment on something that Lori Yates said in the comments here. And she just quoted something out of the Bible that said, Jesus said, I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was hungry and you fed me. Whatsoever you do to the least of these, you do to me. I just want to comment on that because that's kind of a straw man argument. And what she's arguing is that if we want to be Christians, that we have to, help these people every way we can, even to our own detriment. Those verses, Lori, are talking about specifically widows, orphans, beggars, the poor, things like that. And they're talking about what you should do to them, not what your government should do to them. The government has different responsibilities than we do personally. Charity cannot be something that the government does because the government doesn't have its own money. So the government shouldn't be involved in charitable work. It's our job to be involved in charitable work. That's something that you and I should do. And if you're planning to leave that up to the government, you're being irresponsible as a Christian because it's our job to love people directly and not expect the government to do it. Secondly, this verse is not talking about criminals. It's not saying Jesus is not saying that thieves and robbers are saying, I was thirsty and you gave me drink, I was hungry. Thieves and robbers are not the least of these. And the Bible is very clear about what should be done to thieves and robbers. They should be killed in the Old Testament, especially. It doesn't that leaves room, of course, for forgiveness. But as far as the government is concerned, the government, it says in Romans 13, it does not bear the sword in vain. It's that the agents, the law enforcement, the government are God's agents of wrath against the evildoers. And so the people that are crossing our border illegally are immediately breaking the law and stealing from Americans to get into the United States. That makes them robbers and thieves. And so they do not qualify under the verse that you just mentioned. So Todd, you had something to say about that.
Yeah, if I could just riff on that. One of the most common narratives about this mass migration crisis that I hear out there in the mainstream and to the left on the spectrum, political spectrum, is that all of these people that are coming are utterly desperate, destitute, persecuted, cannot return home, fleeing definite death. Mm-hmm. And nothing really is further from the truth. I have spent so many hours down there with the immigrants. I have met thousands of them. I've met hundreds of them just with Chuck on our few trips. Mm-hmm. And when you talk to them and spend any amount of time with them, the majority of them were doing pretty well. They were not destitute. They were not persecuted. There was nothing really wrong. It was
Right.
just that this was an opportunity to upgrade. Like, instead of, the regular membership, you can get a premium membership and get these
For free.
for free.
Right. Yeah,
And
you're getting offered, a bunch of free stuff, and it. I love that you're pointing that out, because that goes perfectly with that verse that she's talking about.
They're
It's
not
perfectly
poor.
contrary to it. That is that these people are not fleeing war and oppression. Unless they're coming from Mexico and they're being oppressed by the Mexican government, they're not fleeing war and oppression. If they're coming from, let's say, Venezuela, which is one of the fairly close places where people might actually be facing war and oppression and, from their government, they have to travel through like 10 countries 10 countries where they could easily get a job and work, 10 countries where they speak the language and understand the culture, where it would be much easier for them than it would be even in the United States. The only difference between those places and the United States is that in the United States, they can make 10 times as much money. And so by coming illegally into the United States, they don't all of a sudden ipso facto become the poor, the tattered, the huddled masses yearning to be free. No, they're not. They are economic migrants. And if they're economic migrants, then we do not have a responsibility to provide for them out of our own largesse.
And Chuck, do you remember the time we went to Guatemala? We were up in the indigenous villages in the highlands, of the western highlands, and we discovered all those houses that they were building, these mansions that they were building on the remittance money from their sons and daughters that they purposefully sent their sons and daughter to the United States to claim that they were persecuted.
Yeah, it was amazing. These ghost towns full of McMansions, in a place where normally people live in thatch roof huts. And all of a sudden we come around the corner and there's this village that's got paved streets, sidewalks, McMansions that are almost completed, and there's nobody there except a few women and children and the few men who are actually working on the houses. It turns out those are the men who get deported for criminal activity. They come back and work construction. But these people were, the entire village en masse went to the United States. They all got jobs in pig farms in Iowa or someplace, and were making $15, $20 an hour, sending their money back home and using it to build these 3,000 square foot mansions back home and completely remake their village where they plan to retire. And so, look, this is an economic issue, but it's also a political issue. And that's what I want. That's what I'm focusing on with this live, is that these people who are coming here they don't realize it perhaps, but they are being used as political weapons of war by various parties, by Mexico, by the Biden administration. They're being weaponized against the American people, and sometimes by their own governments like Venezuela, who are clearing out their prisons, Haiti, clearing out their prisons and sending all of their criminals to the United States, because imagine how much money the state of Venezuela can save by not having to pay for all these prisoners anymore. They just send all their rapists and murderers to the U.S. And we're seeing that in the crime numbers in the United States. Have you done much reporting on the Tren de la Agua gang?
I haven't really gotten there yet.
We need to go down to Cucuta and maybe do some reporting on that. The MS-13 gang has taken a real hit in recent years because the president of El Salvador, where they came from, cracked down on them big time and put them all in jail, like 80,000 people in jail, built big new prisons for them and everything like that, and has really hurt that transnational criminal organization called MS-13. But there's a new transnational criminal organization that's coming out of Venezuela called Tren de la Agua. And Tren de la Agua is every bit as brutal, as violent, and as criminal as MS-13, and they are now on the ascendant in the United States. In places like New York, we're seeing whole gangs of these guys coming from Venezuela up to New York. They're performing home invasions, purse snatchings, car thefts, things like that. And so we're importing organized crime into the United States. Talk about what you've seen there, Todd.
Right. I mean, listen, the best way to tell who's coming across the border is the sample that we get, believe it or not, from U.S. Customs and Border Protection press releases. They're so proud when they catch these criminals, when the ones that they do catch, that they'll write up and put a lot of details in the press releases. These press releases are available on their website. It goes on for miles. You could just pages, thousands of pages of press releases of all these gang guys that they're catching down there. By the way, 2 million have crossed that they didn't catch, that they know that they didn't catch. Probably way more than that.
Well, yeah, so it's probably another 2 million that they didn't catch that they don't know they didn't catch.
Definitely right. They're actually, you're kind of joking, but that's accurate. It's that there's the known gotaways, but there's another official category called the unknown gotaways, and it's a projection. Figure a dotted line.
Yeah, I talked to a guy that lives on the border, a rancher, not long ago, and his ranch has 10 miles of border fence. You know John Ladd. I think he's got a lot more than 10 miles of border fence. It's at least 10 miles of border fence. But you've met John Ladd. And I asked him, how many people would you say get across this border as gotaways that are not seen by the U.S. government and therefore counted as a gotaway? He said probably only 15% of those who cross the border illegally and are not picked up by Border Patrol are seen by the government and counted as a gotaway. That would mean that if there's 2 million known gotaways, there could be 5 or 6 million unknown gotaways.
And the reason why you would run and and hope to graduate to gotawayhood, is because you've got a criminal history that you can't turn yourself in down the way to a Border Patrol because they're going to spot that. Your criminal history was probably in the United States.
Yeah.
And now you have an opportunity to get in and not be deported. There's no Border Patrol out there. And in New Mexico and Arizona, because they're Democrat governors, they don't have concertina wire and National Guard down there to get in the way. But if you go to these press releases, which, granted, it's going to be selection bias. The guys that write them are like, wow, sexual predators. You'll just see hundreds and hundreds of like child molesters and rapists. They like to write up the rapists. I don't know, but and really the biggest category of them all, getting back to your original question, are going to be gang members, known gang members in the database, in the gang transnational criminal organization database. And there'll be like 15 at a time in one press release. Yeah, last night we caught 15 gang members. Go through. You can scroll through there. It'll send chills down your spine to go through. And that's like going to a lake, taking a test tube, dipping it in there and going and testing it and looking at all the contaminants in there. The test tubes tell you what's in that pool. And that pool of runners and gotaways is full of those gang guys.
And it's way larger than what they're catching, without a doubt. That's why they're called gotaways. So, folks, we got 2,000 people watching, and I want you to go to this link I just put up in the comments. Click on Todd Bensman's YouTube channel. It's brand new, just opened it today, and so we want to get him to 1,000 subscribers so that he can start doing lives. He's going down to the border this coming week, and so he needs to have 1,000 subscribers to be able to go live from down there. You can help him do that, and there's a lot of first source video that he shot himself on that on his new YouTube channel. So I highly recommend you go and subscribe to it. Doesn't cost you a thing, but it'll give you the chance to get it firsthand from Todd when he's down there on the border. So while you're at it, hit the like button here on our YouTube channel and subscribe here if you haven't already. I'm going to be putting up some of the packages that I did, that I've done on this issue from the southern border in the recent past over the next couple of days. So if you go to chuckholton.com or go to my Hot Zone YouTube channel, the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton, Todd's a subscriber, you can see those packages and see that not much has changed. It's only gotten worse. So we're talking about the weaponization of migration and all the different ways that it takes form. So, for example, let's just list off some of those now, Todd. I'll do one, and then you do one, and then I'll do one, and then you do one. Okay, so I'm going to say Russia is weaponizing migrants against NATO by collecting up people from Iraq and Afghanistan and places like that and shoving them across the border into Finland now to punish Finland. There's one way that migrants are being weaponized. Now you go.
Yeah, well, Turkey is weaponizing migrants by kicking them out of their shelters and forcing them to go through the Balkans route because the European Union won't pay them.
Okay. Morocco is weaponizing migrants because Spain has two cities that are on the north coast of Africa that are called Ceuta and Melilla. There's actually three, but there's two that Morocco touches. And whenever they get mad at Spain or at the EU, they just open the gates in Morocco and let tens of thousands of migrants into Ceuta. Ceuta is a town of 80,000 people. So if they let 8,000 migrants in an hour, they just increase the population of Ceuta by 10%. And it's an absolute zombie apocalypse. I've been down there to see it. It's unbelievable. Okay, your turn. You go.
Closer to home, we saw Mexican President Lopez Obrador go on 60 Minutes and say, if you don't give us $20 billion, we're going to let the migrants just flood your country up there in the U.S. Give us the $20 billion or else. That's
right. Okay, so just recently we've done a lot of reporting on China weaponizing its own people, allowing them to migrate to the United States. And I've done some reporting on the fact that many of those Chinese illegal migrants end up working on illegal marijuana grows. The Chinese are purchasing farms across America. They're illegally growing marijuana on those farms and using these illegal Chinese migrants to cultivate that. I've even heard some, and these are confirmed reports from California sheriffs saying that once these people no longer want to work on the farms, the people who own the farm just shoot them and dump them in a hole on the farm and then go get some more illegal Chinese migrants. So that's another way that that migrants are being weaponized against the United States. How about, you got any more?
Yeah, I do. Cuba, the regime in Cuba recently decided to let its citizenry fly to Managua by the tens of thousands. And all of a sudden, they had demands on Washington to increase the amount of remittance money that could be sent to lengthen the amount of visitor time that Americans can go visit, to increase the cap on goods that relatives in the U.S. could bring into Cuba. And all of a sudden they were like, okay, we're going to end that Managua stuff that we were doing. That's how that works. It's extraordinary.
That's right. Yeah. And so I was just in Burma. There's a definite weaponization of migration there, although it's internal. The Burmese military is bombing random villages in areas that it does not that it any longer control, and in order to force those villagers out of their homes and make them a drain on the resources of the PDF, that is the People's Defense Forces that are fighting against the Burma army and trying to drive them out. And that's a fascinating story. I just did a live on CBN News about that today. Any more?
Well, let's not forget, just a few years ago, Lukashenko in Belarus, opened up air routes from Turkey to Minsk, and then sent thousands over the border into Poland as punishment. Now they shut that thing down. The Polish shut that down. But guess what's happening again? The air routes opened up, and they're flying them into Belarus again. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, that's a huge weaponization, because like Michael Yan and I went in and reported on Belarus pushing them into Lithuania, just north of Poland, and the same thing. But Lithuania is such a small country that even like 3,500 people getting pushed across the border into Lithuania just about collapsed their social welfare system. And this was Lukashenko just sort of saying, you know, just for not supporting us in this war against Ukraine, here's what you get. So one more, and that is just...
Oh,
go ahead.
You do your one.
Okay, so I just came after, right before I went to Israel. I was in Armenia, and Azerbaijan has weaponized migrants against its enemy Armenia by taking over the Nagorno-Karabakh district, pushing 120,000 people out of their homes, and now they are internally displaced inside Armenia proper, which is costing Armenia huge money. And that's another, again, more stories that need to be told. Now, what's your next one?
Well, mine might be the granddaddy of them all, because it's us. I think that there are political advisors inside the White House, DHS, the State Department, the Domestic Policy Council, that organized the policies that created this huge invitation to the world to cross our border, ending deportation and detention, because they hate their own country and want to see it destroyed and suffering. And that, I think, is an internal weaponization of mass migration from within.
That's right. And as we pointed out earlier, without a doubt, this election season, the Democratic Party is weaponizing migrants against our own people by shipping, because they know they're a burden. We're already past the apportionment stage, because it's been, you know, it'll be until 2030 when we have a census again. What I mean by that, folks, is that these sanctuary cities that say they're welcoming to migrants, you notice they're not so welcoming to migrants anymore. They were welcoming migrants before the 2020 census, because every body that they have in their cities counts toward apportionment of Congress people, if 435 congressional delegates in the House. And so they picked up something like 4 or 5 seats, most likely for the Democratic Party, by just welcoming anybody with a pulse into their city, because that all basically gives those people a vote. Now, that's apportionment, but on the other side of that, now that the census is over, none of those sanctuary cities want their migrants anymore. Now they want to push that burden onto red states in order to be a burden on those red states to make their economies look worse and try to help themselves in the upcoming elections. So you're right. These migrants, they think they're coming for a better life, and maybe they will find a better life, but all of that, this whole crisis is being used against the American people. And folks, you can find out a lot more about that in that kind of reporting from Todd Bensman. Like I say, Todd is the first source reporter. He's the guy that goes and gets the original information. I've been with him a lot doing that, and there's nobody that's better. He's not on one side or the other. He's just there to tell the facts. You can go to his YouTube channel, and I'm gonna, as we get done here, because we're just over an hour, I'm gonna again post that link and encourage you to, as soon as we get done, go to that channel and subscribe to Todd's YouTube channel so that he can get enough people to start going live. I have to subscribe. I didn't even subscribe yet. Okay, I subscribed, Todd.
All right, thank you. Well, you know, the first video, they only, when you have 0 subscribers, like I did this morning, you can only put 10 videos up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just back.
You got hundreds.
Yeah, and I'm just back from Juarez, fresh from like just a few days with a lot of good drone video. I put my tent up for the day, so that's what you'll get today. And I'm gonna, as soon as the dawn breaks tomorrow, I'll put another 10 and keep
Okay,
going.
well, hopefully we can get you to 1,000 pretty quick, and then you can post as many as you want. But I thank you for coming on with me. I mean, this is a good discussion, and it's one that definitely needs to be had in this season because of the election coming up. People need to know that there is a war being waged for your mind. This information war is the real world war that's happening across the globe right now. We are in the midst of World War III in that way, and information is the weapon. That information is being weaponized against you to try to change your mind, to try to get you to do whatever party wants you to do. And it's information like this. It's getting the truth out that will let you make an informed decision. And that's what we're trying to do here on CBN. So Todd, thank you very much for doing that. We always finish up our lives here on CBN with a prayer. So let me pray. And folks, I pray that you'll join me with 2,000 people praying. Man, we can make a difference. So let's do that. Lord, I come to you right now and I just ask you for clarity. I pray that people watching this would be able to understand the truth of what's happening around them. I pray that the news that we deliver would give them the ability to do that better. I pray for people who are hurting and pray that you would thwart the plans of evil men wherever they are. Lord, that you'd be glorified in what we do, that we would love the people around us and not expect the government or anybody else to do it for us. We pray your blessings on Todd and his new YouTube channel and ask that you would help it grow. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, folks, thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate it. And we'll be on again. I'll be on my YouTube channel a little later today. I'm experimenting with some cool new stuff. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go over to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton and subscribe and hit that notification bell and you can see we go on. But before you go subscribe to my channel, please, again, do Todd a favor and go subscribe to his channel here on YouTube so he can start going live as well. You won't regret that at all. Doesn't cost you a thing. Just click on this link I'm about to put up and you can do it. We'll see you later. Take care. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you so much. I appreciate what you do.
Sure thing, man. All right, we'll see you. End stream.